So, good morning, everybody, and welcome to our webinar on DePIN developments in Germany and the role of international collaboration. We, as the organizer from the German Blockchain Association, are happy that you join us today. Special thanks goes to Jochen Kasperger and 51 Notes for supporting this event. And without further ado, because we have a packed agenda for the next 90 minutes, let's start with a quick round of introductions, starting with Daniel Kliche from IABG. Daniel.
Thanks, Sebastian, and thanks for having me, and thanks for organizing this event. I'm an aerospace engineer, therefore always looking into what's possible from the technical side. I'm working for IBG, heading the innovation center there. Not dealing much more now with aerospace, or more with defense and security, and more in the field of AI and innovation stuff, more the digital innovation stuff. Also Web3, of course. So that's my main role. Second role is I'm founder and organizer of some events here in Munich over the last couple of years with W3 MOOC. So Munich has a strong ecosystem, as you are aware of and all know, like industry-wise. But there's also a Web3 community which we are trying to bring together and find synergies. Looking forward to step in later, Sebastian.
Thank you. Okay. Have success in your meeting. Next in line is Alexandra Mikitjuk, co-founder, CEO at Stacks from Berlin, and also in the meantime a DePIN and decentralization pioneer and longtime part of the German blockchain ecosystem. Please, Sasha, introduce yourself.
Thank you, Sebastian. Thank you, everybody, for organizing. Super excited to bring different partners to the table. So here, streaming directly from Berlin. And so I would specifically mention a little bit about the journey of Stacks. So we started the journey as part of Deutsche Telekom's Innovation Laboratory, researching around distributed systems and distributed networks, including the whole Web3 space. And so leading this group, we had an opportunity to get independent. So we are operating independently already for roughly around 5 years on the market as Stacks. And I think, we were absolutely proud that in the year of 2018, as part of this engagement, we actually launched the first DePIN mobility infrastructure here in Germany. It was tested around scooters across the area around Bonn and Berlin. And that's where we get the chance to really hands-on gather all the experience, what does DePIN infrastructure actually needs? And this is how Stacks has been heavily rooted into the industry requirements, how to actually build such systems. So today we progressed quite a lot. I'm super happy to announce our first I would say, real industrial bus fleet that is driven by Web3 technologies, driving right now in North Rhine-Westphalia. And basically, just as one sentence, Stacks is helping companies to actually put their data on chain. We are writing into different chains today. We support more than 6 to 7 chains at the moment. So through Stacks protocol, bus operators have the chance to actually verify their data. And what is extremely exciting is that we already have cases where in disputes, actually courts started to accept blockchain entries as trusted and verified data. So right now we're also looking into extremely interesting use cases as like public safety. So for instance, the information that is being recorded on the bus, if something happens inside the bus, can actually be put on chain and shared across the municipalities, police departments, etc. And so this is the processes that we're automating right now. So super excited to be here and share a little bit more.
Thanks, Alexandra. Peter, you're next.
Yeah, thanks.
Saying hello.
Hi, yes, Peter Busch here. I'm working as a director of technology here at Bosch Mobility Strategy out of Stuttgart. most of the people here in the call already know, because since years, really, we have working in these fields of decentralizations. So I'm having now a department here really working in towards, I would say, decentralization as a whole, but of course, looking merely for the future, really looking decentralized trusted AI, what I'll talk a little bit more about later. And from the past, you might know my activities really as well in the blockchain areas. And with other companies, we had a huge project talking already about economy of things, like almost 10 years ago when we started out all these activities here at Bosch. Quite happy to be here and talk a little bit more about the actual and the future activities in these areas of Bosch.
Thanks a lot, Peter, for joining. Next is Florian, also live from Berlin. So we have a Berlin corner here with Alex and Florian.
Together, right? Thanks, Sebastian, for the intro. So Florian Kittelmann from Alstom. I'm heading within Alstom the development of autonomous trains and remote driving and all those kind of elements where we endeavor to take the driver out of the cab. And together with mobile chain, we worked on let's call it a POC to see, once we're not going to have a driver on the train anymore, there are certain implications from a legal perspective. And obviously, when either you want to testify or look at certain mentions or use the data into a wider data ecosystem, how can you use this without involving or without having an impact on the existing infrastructure, the existing trains, etc. So it's like a plug-in, which is quite interesting, because if we look at let's say Germany alone, you have let's say 20,000 trains running around, and if you want to start moving into an automation, this is where you need to start. You cannot wait the 5 to 10 years until a new train is being introduced. You need to look at your existing install base, and that's what I'm looking at also.
Perfect. Thanks, Florian. Now Mickey is next in line with a quick personal intro.
Hi, Sebastian. Mickey Watkins. I am the CEO and the founder of World Mobile. World Mobile is a project that aims to connect everyone, everywhere. We started off in the emerging markets in Africa. Then we moved into Asia. Now most recently, we're in the United States of America and also heading into Europe and Germany. We have a decentralized, distributed physical network made up of 3 different elements: air nodes, earth nodes, and the World Mobile chain. And we aim to become what Uber has done for taxis for telecommunications.
Thanks, Mickey. And last in row, but a very significant actor today, Jochen Kasperger from our member company 51 Nodes. Please, Jochen.
Yeah, thanks, Sebastian. Thanks for inviting me to this very exciting panel. So I'm Jochen Kasperger, co-founder of 51 Nodes, located in Stuttgart in Germany, currently talking from Croatia. We started in 2017, supporting companies like Bosch, like Honda, and others also in Alstom and ERBG on this panel, using decentralized technologies. Basically, so we have an integration role most of the time. Nevertheless, very early on, we also did some exciting projects in the mobility space. For instance, mobility blockchain platform. Together with Daimler Mobility, we looked into the capabilities of infrastructure tokenization with partners like Bosch and Börse Stuttgart. So yeah, we have been around for quite a while. I'm very excited to talk about the different use cases and technologies today.
Thanks a lot, Jochen. So let's start this webinar with an impulse, because we want to cover DePIN developments in Germany, but also highlight the role of international collaborations. And of course, even before the term or the acronym DePIN has been coined, we were seeing the first projects in this space. We all know about helium networks, or about other companies in the data center space that started the idea to tokenize infrastructure and certain components of it. Of course, the global environment in the last 5 years, as we all know, has not been always favorable, and just the cyclical nature of the blockchain ecosystems, we are now seeing, I would say, a resurgence and a second wave of interest in industrial blockchain applications. Of course, DePIN was much more en vogue as a term 2 years ago, but now we see players, for example, like Bosch and others that had, let's say, other priorities after the breakout of the war coming back, and several building blocks that we already discussed 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago are now coming back on the table. So the first speaker giving an impulse would be Mickey Watkins. And of course, you look, Mickey, as an outsider to the German market. And in the last few months, you have collaborated with 51 Nodes and other companies here on the panel to try to break into German industry. You just started by describing what the World Mobile Group's ambition is. So maybe you can elaborate in the next 5 minutes what your hopes are and which building blocks and use cases you see as key and moving faster than other aspects of the DePIN journey. Mickey, over to you.
Yeah, I think that DePIN is really interesting. We were around before the word DePIN was invented. Although we are pretty new into the German market, Alstrom, we work very closely with. They're building on the World Mobile Chain, IABG as well, also building on the World Mobile Chain. We also look like we'll be doing something with Bosch too. I think the DePIN market is maturing. I think it's now, rather than just Web3, it looks like DePIN is there to solve. People are looking deeper into the infrastructure stack. And I think there's something you need to look at when you look at DePIN. You need to look at the nature of distribution, and then you need to look at decentralization, two very different things, although they sound very similar. So when you talk about the nature of distribution, having lots of nodes to be able to support something like World Mobile is very important. But equally, not having one centralized voice controlling what those nodes do is also just as important. So we see something quite special happening. We think that this can solve many of the problems that exist today, especially pertaining to us and connectivity. Half the world is unconnected, and there's a reason for that. Google, Facebook, Microsoft, the 810, 820 mobile network operators around the world, they haven't been able to solve this problem. Why? There's not enough hands. So if you democratize the ability for people to be able to enter into the telecommunications market, and this can apply to other markets too, but specifically to telecoms, all of a sudden, as an entity, you don't need to have 1,000 trucks and 75,000, 100,000 workers to go out and deploy. So DePIN for me was an experiment, but I think now actually what we're seeing is operational needs of companies are being fulfilled here. And it's a framework where the alignment of economic incentives around critical infrastructure begin to take place. So it's a very special moment where the convergence of technology and mindset come together, and the acceptance of Web3 is also starting to become something real. So yeah, DePIN for me is something that I believe can change the face of the planet and can solve many of the critical problems that companies are facing.
Thanks a lot, Mickey, for this impulse. In Germany, with our industrial base, of course, there are a few fundamental questions. I think if we talk and discuss DePIN, especially also with larger firms, one is, of course, the question, are we threatened by vendor or infrastructure login, or is there an open source stack and environment that is finally evolving? Then there's a lot of discussion around efficiency and how DePIN and blockchain tech can help to manage sector coupling in the future. Very important for Germany. And at the same time, we've not only seen a certain amount of regulation now finally being approved, but also big progress on the infrastructure and tech side of things. This means, of course, that also the expectations are rising towards the vendors and solution providers. So what's the importance of revenues these days? You have revenues as an active, let's say, mobile operator in certain regions of the world. So what do investors and partners expect from a company or solution provider or ecosystem like yourselves? Can you tell us a little bit what has changed there in the last 2-3 years?
Yeah, I just want to start by saying Ethereum was launched in Germany. So as a place of innovation, Germany has to catch up because they haven't actually, they've gone backwards, right, as a country. And I think that what we're seeing now is this rush to catch up because there's some acceptance. So that's the first thing. Second of all, cash is king, revenue is king. If you want to deploy a network and you ask people to put up nodes, there needs to be revenue flowing through there. So I think expectations of investors is far greater than it was 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years ago when we talked about this decentralized or distributed network infrastructure. So you have to find a suitable fit into the market where actually node operators are going to get paid. Now, whether those node operators are individuals, private entities, or corporations like Deutsche Telekom running nodes, ultimately it's fun, but fun goes away. Budgets dictate. So you have to bring revenue into these systems. I like what Stacks is doing as well, being able to monetize your data. I've met Alexandra before in Germany, and I think they're onto something as well. So revenue is really, really, really very important, and solving real world problems is very important. So for me, DePIN is just a word. Actually, running nodes is the magical power that all of the blockchain and crypto community have. This is something that is the key thing, right? We're able to deploy, put up nodes, very highly technically skilled people, but if those nodes don't make money, eventually it's going to go to zero. It's simple, right? So you've got to make sure that revenue is running through your systems and you're fixing a real world problem.
Compared to Helium, which were targeting the global rollout of their hardware infrastructure and network, you have chosen a more insular approach. Is this the right way to go forward and to increase, let's say, revenue per, let's say, territory, or what was the thinking and rationale behind this?
So we actually were born, I would say, at the same time as Helium. They focused on IoT, where we focused more on cellular or full stack connectivity. Helium have been through several different transitions. They, as I said, first of all, they started on IoT miners, but the revenue wasn't there. Then there was a magical internet money, which I think has been great for the industry and also terrible for the industry at the same time. Then they realized that they probably needed to do something else because the miners were not happy because they were not making a return, and everyone started to realize there's no real revenue running through there. Then they moved more towards a CBRS rollout, but it's very hard to make CBRS work, especially if you don't have a mobile core and you don't have a full understanding of telecommunications. And then they moved towards Wi-Fi, and that's where they are today. So they're an MVNO running on T-Mobile, a subsidiary of Deutsche Telekom. And they use Wi-Fi to offload. And Wi-Fi is a great innovation, fantastic, but it has its limitations in the cellular stack. So World Mobile is a little different. World Mobile approached it from a mobile network operator perspective rather than just an MVNO perspective, where we can control the radios that are in our stack with licensed spectrum, a combination of CBRS, Band 71, Wi-Fi, and many other frequencies that we can get our hands on. And we built something a little bit different, a full stack for telecommunications. And then all of that feeds into the World Mobile chain, whereas Helium have decided that they would go from their own blockchain to dissolving that project and then working on Solana. So they have limitations. I think there's a big difference between what World Mobile is today and what Helium is today. But ultimately, both companies are solving a problem in a slightly different way. World Mobile's approach is one where it's a global approach. We're in 7 or 8 different African countries. We're in 2 Asian countries. We're in the United Kingdom. We're in the USA. And I think that with this kind of mobile network operator approach, you're able to tackle this problem head on far more efficiently and at a larger scale than simply Wi-Fi offloading and becoming an MVNO. That's not to say anything bad about Helium. I think that they are the standout company in the DePIN space that everyone refers to, and they kind of gave birth to what DePIN is and what it could be, where you could just put a node up and you could start to make money. But there's a lot more in-depth details that are needed to actually make it successful and to have a network that can connect hundreds of millions of people or potentially billions of people. And companies like World Mobile have the potential to do that. Not because of me, not because of my team, but because you're empowering a community. And the question before, revenue. You're enabling revenue to flow through there. We saw this with solar panels on people's roofs, right? In the beginning, there was a lot of upset from the electricity companies. Like, what are you doing? You're stealing from us. It's like, no, we're not stealing from you. We're monetizing our rooftop and we'll sell back to you. And the acceptance became global. And many places, Australia, huge in this sector, United States of America, huge in this sector. Europe, not as huge because we don't have as much sun, but beginning to become something big. So I see a day where everybody can have, whether it's a World Mobile Air node, a radio on their roof, or another company's radio on their roof, and further monetize their rooftops. And that's the answer. People care because they're good people, but ultimately the goodness in someone evaporates if you are doing something consistently that's costing you money or not earning you something and you having to pay attention to it. People care much more when they are earning revenue, and then it's easier to enjoy what you're doing because you're getting paid for it.
Perfect. Thanks for that clarification, Mickey. And we hope that we see World Mobile, but also the other networks progressing in that space, because of course we need different pieces of infrastructure for different use cases. Jumping now into the discussion, maybe first question to Alexandra. Mickey mentioned the importance of course, decentralized networks and that nodes need to make money. The validator and staking business that Deutsche Telekom also worked on is still within Deutsche Telekom and is growing, and you left the company. Maybe you can elaborate a little bit on the IoT and mobility use cases that you are focusing on, and how you also solved the connectivity problem for the data transmission from the bus and public transport data that you are collecting right now, and also talk a little bit about the partnerships that you are having, because of course, as an industry association, we want to highlight all the good companies and projects in the space. Sasha.
Right. So happy to share, and was super happy to hear also about World Mobile progress. It's super exciting. We're all together, and so I would maybe start with partnerships first. Working throughout a lot of projects where we deal with connected devices, we actually learned throughout our work inside Deutsche Telekom is that on average, if a builder, right, IoT builder or connected device builder is assembling an application today, they deal with around 18 different integrations. So it's about data storage, it's about connectivity, it's about security, it's about remote access, it's about networking, etc. And so it becomes inherently complicated because you not only have to cover your user journey, so you have to create databases for accounts, etc. You also have to manage the hardware cycle. So it becomes so complicated that essentially, I think, we talk inside the connected space more and more about partnerships, because by the end of the day, the customer wants to have plug and play solution, and they're not happy with integrating different services and being, by the end of the day, responsible for everything working. And then on top of it, we also have all these fundamental issues with security and cyber resilience right now more and more. So that's where we have started also, coming out of Deutsche Telekom and partnering with all the providers to say, well, we need to stack for our customers. So basically, that's where the partnership engagement comes from, because customers wants to have all-in-one solution, all connected, right? So that's what we also, as Stacks, looking into. We're not only working on connectivity on the software layer. So, for instance, our customers get all-in-one network, but also going deeper and partnering with SIM card providers, right? So there is also physical connectivity. And by the end of the day, in a lot of cases, the customers, like what we see in the industry, a lot of SMEs, they don't differentiate, right, between different types of connectivity. What we also have noticed that a lot of 5G functionality, like you can go deeper into the connectivity stack, you can book your own frequencies, you can book your own quality on demand parameters, etc. Funny enough, it exists in the telco space already for quite some time, right? And so the industry, has no idea about these things, right? And so what we are seeing is that somehow, I guess, telecommunication companies are also failing in explaining all these, beautiful features that can be done towards the industry. So there is like a huge gap on this. And misunderstanding of, what are my use cases? How can I leverage the 5G infrastructure, et cetera, et cetera. And then also there is now this whole world of Web3, right? So you can do a lot of beautiful things with it. So that's where we are fundamentally focusing on, and that's where all the partnerships are, coming together, because the customers just want to, make it work. And so this is what is super exciting, because on one side, we are promoting Web3 in the industry, because a lot of use cases like trusted telecommunication, etc., cannot even be done with Web2. But also there is this gap in, a lot of Web2 issues. And so it becomes very interesting in and makes the partnerships fundamental. And so a little bit about our work with Demo is that also there is another component that also Web3 is enabling, right? So it's amazing because you can democratize things, you can like add on developers, and, like for instance, on the Demo platform, there is a ton of applications right now that everyone, you and I, can go and code, and this will be accessible within a day for, for a user of a car or for an owner of a fleet. But then it's like another layer of complexity. So we have to package it. We have to make it plug and play for our customer. So we have to say, this is the value, this is the problem we're solving. And so I guess, it becomes, especially in the spectrum of mobility applications, it becomes very interesting, because now we are able to interconnect blockchain connectivity. We're able to leverage physical connectivity, whatever it is for the customer. And we're also able to leverage application connectivity, where the DePIN specifically open up the platforms for a lot of developers to come in and actually develop applications. And as you remember, for a lot of especially telco providers, it was always a topic, how to actually open up our ecosystem, how to invite developers so that they can code on it. So connecting these three strong blocks, we think that's an amazing way forward on the other, on one side. On the other side, we always have to, and I would just, highlight what Miki has said, the value for the customer. So by the end of the day, the whole stack, the whole iceberg underneath, it's not interesting for them. And we are only focusing on the value itself. So what we've been extremely successful doing with Stacks, we started off with secure connectivity. That was rather less interesting. And then we actually came towards the actual value for the industry, because there is a huge problem around any type of report. Like, right, when I aggregate data and I have to share it with municipality, I have to share it with my subcontractors, I have to share it with the actual customer of mine. So today, mobility operators, they have to, when they sign, for instance, contracts with the municipality, they have a certain amount of kilometers they drive over the next 10 years. So you can imagine with manual work, and they also have a lot of people that are, changing jobs. It's fundamentally complex to actually create this database, over the 10 years. So that's what we're working on, building inside our Stacks network, the mechanism to actually automate this reporting. So today we enable a couple of use cases. The companies today can track their CO2 production on chain. So we ultimately create a signed and hashed data stream of CO2 values that we write to different blockchains. And then the companies have a way to say after a month or after 2 months, like, they have their own CO2 certificate that they can share across different parties that requested this data. This is one use case, super excited about this one. Also, we've been extremely successful with APC applications. It's about automated passenger counting. So the companies, especially in Latin America, they have a huge issue with data fraud. So basically, they are not reporting all the amount of tickets that have been sold. So this is also an amazing application for on-chain data, verified data use cases, where we can show to municipality in an automated manner, how many passengers have been transported, and actually compare it to the data that is being reported by the operators. So these are use cases that are prominent at the moment.
Those are great examples, and thanks for elaborating further on the importance of connectivity and what, let's say, major preconditions for successful DePIN project rollouts are. Handing over to Peter. Peter, you described the journey that Bosch has taken, investing a lot of time and involving a lot of Bosch personnel into the economy of things. Let's say strategy. We also talked about the difficult global circumstances, but now also, let's say, interest within Bosch in certain elements of this whole stack is rising again. Can you explain a little bit what the dynamics are, apart from, of course, savings and cost efficiencies that everybody in Europe now with the new tariffs are highly interested in?
Absolutely, yeah, exactly. So I think it would be a little bit boring just to talk about savings and cost cutting and so, because we can't hear it anymore around us. However, as we have really this long journey behind us in the economy of things, history and activities, I think a major change is coming to us at the moment right now. You already mentioned it, the geopolitical circumstances are really changing a lot, especially the things happening from the US and the administration there, and their, I would say, interesting politics worldwide. And on the other side, the China challenges that we see definitely, where we had really some challenges made by ourselves in the European industry, of course, on the other side. And what we are now seeing, what a huge chance is in terms of decentralization, is the, I would say, the huge, mandate that the European countries now get in terms of data sovereignty. So that we need to come up with new ideas, or maybe not so new, but again, have a new support coming out of these new circumstances that I talked about. So in particular, when I look now in the recent journey, we had when we had this huge public project, Move ID, we are just finishing that in this summer, where we talked about decentralized identities for traffic. Working really a lot on the standardization together with other industrial partners like other tier ones, like very interesting startups like 51 nodes here in the call, but as well other interesting startups like Peak as well, quite known in the DePIN space, Ocean Protocol, and Fetch of course as well, and all the others. We found out that there is a huge need when it comes to data sovereignty when we talk about decentralization, especially in the case for digital identities, for example. So that we see really have a decentralized basis for cars, any mobility, I would say any mobility nodes in the connected world, in the highly connected traffic of the future, to authenticate, to authorize yourself, and as well have a new means on data sovereignty. And the other part, which I'm very active, and I just really got a huge support as well from my board, also renewed on that, because we see we need to go in new turfs now. And that's, you all know me since years. where we really are struggling to get the awareness of really as well of the top management to really go more into that. So we were always, I would say, tied and bound a little bit in our old ideas, the old business, the old ways how to do business. And that way, we now see huge changes in decentralization space when we talk about more data sovereignty, and as well, for example, using AI in the future. Everybody talking about agentic AI, for example. And now it comes into play a really huge opportunity, and I would say a very, very lucky moment now for us, especially for me in my personal situation, since I'm chairing the Fetch AI Foundation, which we founded 3 years or 4 years ago already, together with Fetch AI, but as well Deutsche Telekom and other bigger partners now, trying to build up the governance to technology opportunities based on open source, based on really Web3 technologies. And we talked about agentic AI already 3, 4, 5 years ago when nobody was talking about it. And now, since my board is now really listening and accepting really new activities, projects and stuff, where we are really implementing this new technology in our future product services and together with partners, the OEMs, our dear customers, are now starting to listen to us and say, okay, what is not possible in the industry? What do we as European countries need to do now? Exactly now is the time. Really, the wind of change is really coming to us. Of all the negative aspects we see, of course, on the other side, now we have the chance to handle or to act now on these tariffs. Of course, we can't change here. This is really hurting us a lot here in Europe and in all the other parts of the world. But again, we will see the backlash coming back to the US, and they will change it again. I'm quite sure about that. However, when it comes to trust, and trust is really the big meaning behind decentralization now, that we can get back the control over the data to the end customers. And this is exactly what resonating to the OEMs, to all the other industrial companies when it comes to the end user, what they do with their data, what is happening with their data when it comes to trusted AI, for example. This is exactly what we are pushing and forcing now in our new projects when we let cars talk to the infrastructure using agentic AI, but not using the classic models, just buying the nice tools, the nice frameworks from the usual suspects out there on the hyperscaler side, but really are working together with them maybe as well, but building our own technologies here, like agentic AI, which is decentralized, which is very tied, very closely tied to the decentralized digital identity. So all the time exactly know which agents do what for you, on what kind of LLMs you are talking to, where does the data come from, and as well the economic situation, because the economy of things is coming really a reality again now. When it says, okay, who is earning money with what? Where is the data coming from? Provenance is a huge thing now these days. And you have to now prove where the data is coming from, what you are doing with it, especially in mobility or in the industry here in automotive, when you always have to prove that you are safe on the roads, that you really know what kind of data you are using and who is behind this. Look at all these cybersecurity threats which come with the new AI tools they have as well on the other side. So exactly, talked a lot now about the new opportunities and challenges. And so I think with some of the partners here already in the call, we are talking about, and for that, definitely new windows of opportunity for us. And maybe that is really what drives us. And I'm looking forward to it now to really drive it all again and maybe talk about that stuff we already did in the past, but now with a new force behind. And so happy to give you more information. Whoever wants to hear more about it, what we're doing in the foundation, what we're doing in the new projects with our customers, just contact me. I can give you much more data on that.
Perfect. Thanks, Peter. And I remember winning a prize together with you and Fetch at Bosch's global conference in Berlin. That was already, I think, 2018. So yes, a few years of, let's say, working to prepare DePIN and agentic AI landscapes. A quick follow-up question to you. There have been, because we talk about, of course, industry collaboration today as well, there have been, of course, all those European and German consortia. You mentioned MoveID, which is a subgroup of Gaia X. and we have Catena X and the Material X and all the other X's. And we know that sometimes when it came to fixing the technical setup of those consortiums, blockchain was left out because, for example, Catena X decided, I think, a quarter after FTX was collapsing, so it wasn't a very good moment to say we build our future on blockchain tech. But now, in the meantime, and I'm asking you for a short answer before we jump to the next impulse from Florian. In the meantime, we've seen a few blockchain standards come out of ISO, for example. Is this progress in standardization going to be important to, let's say, in the second wave of discussions, add blockchain to all those, let's say, future backends that we are talking about?
Yeah, I think so, definitely, because all this fear, uncertainty, and doubt, which came directly with the blockchain hype as well. It was like a kindergarten. I could never really use the word or the expression blockchain with my top management. But that changed. We call it now, new words here, decentralization, new data sovereignty stuff. But again, as it's the whole scene, the whole technology has matured a lot in the last years. We now have this opportunity to get with a fresh idea, with a fresh push on it. And especially in the standardization area, we see we need some kind of more decentralized new technologies here. And this is coming up. Especially what we are seeing as well is some of the bigger companies in the tech world as well are opening their ears and eyes for these new technologies. This helped us really push that a lot. And I'm with you here, definitely. We have a new way how to begin that and to continue the activities we started already 10 years ago. This is exactly what helps us right now.
Thanks, Peter. So progressing in this webinar and coming to the next impulse, Florian Kittelmann from Alstom is going to talk about a number of pilot projects that he has been driving forward within Alstom and also in partnership with 51 Nodes and World Mobile Chain and Group. So maybe you can talk a little bit, Florian, about the thinking at Alstom. You said the first few words in your personal intro earlier, but tell us about the links between edge AI and the shortage of skilled laborers and the long, let's say, planning and sales cycles for railway and railway equipment. And of course, we all know that, especially in Germany, we have some problems with the underlying network infrastructure. So what's the big picture here? And where does DePIN comes into the equation?
Yeah, thanks, Sebastian. So I'll zoom out a little bit. I think I need to explain firstly what rail is built on, and rail is built on trust. And when we talk about trust, we mean that it's not possible for example, one train colliding with another train, or a train ruling too fast. So there's signaling infrastructure, and then there's on the rail, on the trains, there is a corresponding signaling infrastructure, or signaling components which secure that a train is adhering to certain rules. At the same time, it's pretty costly, and there's a lot of regulation which is governing the system. And especially in Europe, that is pretty strict. And when we look at how long it takes to modernize infrastructure, to provide the trains, or to update the trains with the respective onboard architecture, etc., this is where we're seeing that the system may not be as efficient as it could be. So a couple of years ago, we started looking at what we call blockchain interlocking. And that blockchain interlocking is, for example, destined to say that one train is reserving a piece of infrastructure, and then basically the train is rolling onto the infrastructure. When he's leaving the infrastructure, it releases that node again. So those are elements that we started working on, and we even have patents on it 4 or 5 years ago. At the time, we discarded the idea because it's not in line with European standards, and a lot of the public contracts we're having is always based on European infrastructure. At the same time, when we think about incidents that happen. And I'll give you two examples. One example is the accident we had just recently in Stuttgart, where you have a modern train which is moving into an infrastructure which is faulty, and then nothing currently can avoid this happening because nobody knew that something was happening on that infrastructure. I'll come back to that example later, because now there's a lot of people calling for infrastructure investments and how this could be avoided. Another example is when you have old signaling systems, which are currently still managed by hand. It's prone to human error, which means that it still happens sometimes that two trains collide because there is no modern infrastructure, there's no modern signaling systems. Now, as Alstom, what we're saying is, how can we increase the speed to deploy trusted infrastructure projects? And how can we do this at a marginal cost? Which means that you're able to implement something that is a lot quicker, and also implement something on existing rolling stock. And together with 51Notes and World Mobile, we looked at a very simple case, which is that let's imagine we don't have a train driver on board anymore. There is no change to the existing train required to do this, for example, for the the authorization of the train. And there are certain elements on the train where the authorization body always needs to say, well, we've checked it, it works, etc. And one of those elements, for example, also the judicial recorder. Meaning when you want to implement a change of the train, and at the same time you change the judicial recorder, you've got a pretty lengthy process to demonstrate that the train is still safe to operate. So then we said, okay, let's do a plug-in judicial recorder. And that's the project we worked on, which actually we worked on this based on a mobile phone. So we said, okay, let's make it as simple as possible. So we're going to ask 51Notes and World Mobile to implement a small application. When you enter the cab, you're just putting your mobile phone and you're clicking, you start the mission. And then the driver could either exit, or it could also be with a driver still on board. And that application is tokenizing the video footage continuously that is being taken. Meaning you've got a video of whatever the driver would see, and you're able to prove that this video has actually happened at the time, at the speeds, with a certain acceleration. So you can even from a simple mobile phone, you can grab a lot of the surrounding elements. So what we found out is that it's firstly relatively simple to implement. Secondly, it's fast, and it closes a gap in this whole ecosystem of trustworthiness, because trust can be created either by having a closed infrastructure, which is what rail usually does, or you open up the infrastructure, you're adding certain elements, but you're doing this in a trustworthy way. And this is where the second element of the project comes in, because then we said, okay, now that we have trustworthy data on the phone and backed up in the cloud, what else can we do with it? And then we had the very simple case where we said, operators, and this goes back also to what Alexandra was explaining. Operators always have a topic around understanding how many people are on my platforms, how many people are actually on the train, et cetera, et cetera. And therefore we said, okay, let's just do a simple person counting on platforms mechanism in the background. And you could do a lot more because it's just visual AI recognition. So you can have a lot of use cases recognizing what's happening on those pictures, which takes me to the other two use cases that I was explaining earlier. Just imagine you would have a gateway into your train management system that is able to trust information that is coming from outside, and then could tell the train, well, by the way, you have rain, there is a potential issue on your infrastructure going forward, therefore you need to decelerate. When we want to implement these systems today, they need to be integrated into the security infrastructure, meaning if you want to monitor your rail infrastructure, etc., and have a direct implication on what the train is doing, you need to prove that it's still for basically 10 to the power 6 reliable. And with simple solutions that you plug in, you can actually provide information which you can then use in order to guide your decisions. There's other examples like rail buckles. We had the let's say mud avalanche in Germany. What happens in the US quite a lot is that because of heat, the rail is buckling up, which means that suddenly the rail is not straight anymore, but it's curved. And then you've got a lot of trains which are also derailing because they're not going to straight move anymore. And then they have to decelerate, moving at low speeds in order to avoid these kind of incidents. So we're seeing that there's a lot of information that can be gathered outside the vehicle, from within the vehicle, or from other use cases, which could have a positive impact on how you run railways. But currently, there is not a real gateway into these trusted systems, so that you trust the source data, you trust the data provenance, and therefore you're able to take decisions into your operations. And those are elements we're looking at. And I think this is where we're experimenting. One of the issues we're facing in rail is pretty simple, that once you're going into your core rail application, you're governed by a lot of regulation, which is right that we're doing this because in the end, people need to trust that there is nothing happening while they're on journey. At the same time, we're always seeing these accidents or incidents happening, and we need to think about how we make the overall rail system more resilient. And my take on it is that blockchain, especially when we talk about trusted data, could have a pivotal role in scaling up that ecosystem. Sebastian, you're talking to yourself.
Yes. Pressing the button a little bit too late. Thanks for that very comprehensive overview, Florian. It describes the project well. And my follow-up question would go to Jochen and the role of integrators. The project you were describing, Florian, was driven, or let's say enabled, by a grant coming from World Mobile Chain and MiCAR. And of course, we know that blockchain networks are using grants to drive industry adoption. We talked about the difficult global circumstances, that sometimes innovation budgets have been under above average pressure in the last few years. At the same time, we understood, I think, the importance to make critical infrastructure more resilient. And now, if we think of the most advanced sector, if it comes to blockchain tech adoption, which is the financial industry, Jochen, maybe you can talk a little bit about what's the role of an integrator, not only to integrate technically, but also to build those bridges, let's say, from the mobility industry or energy industries to, in the end, financial settlements, because of course the interesting follow-up or end game, once we have notarized data, is then to create data tokens and to also initiate future data markets. So tell us a little bit about all of this from 51Note's perspective.
Yes, thanks, Sebastian. There's a couple of interesting perspectives on that. First, I would say what we can see over the last couple of years and quite a number of projects is industry convergence in a way. So the question of how could we integrate energy use cases with mobility use cases can be technically leveraged through decentralized networks. We proved that a couple of times. There is secondly, when we look at the discussions with the use cases we had before, what we can see is like a use case whereby we have information or data from a IoT device or from a train or a car, and we wanted to utilize usage data that we generate while using the vehicle, let's say, we get an interesting integrated path that starts at a vehicle that arises the question of how can we trust the data, and then how can we appropriately structure and move the data, and how can we manage it within a cloud environment, and then how can we utilize it afterwards, for instance, for value add purposes or data monetization on data marketplaces. So that's kind of the interesting underlying theme we can see in the different use cases, be it what we do together with Bosch in MoveID, for instance, or be it in the use case with Alstom, and we can also see it in the use case, in the drone use case we will talk about a little bit later with IABG. So that's that is like the second perspective, I would say. A third aspect is what Outlier Venture recently named the post-web, where we can see on a technological or technology stack level where are the functions of different technologies, and I think they analyzed correctly, and you guys can go to Outlier Venture and look up the newest thesis on the post-web, that Web3 or blockchain technologies are basically backend technologies. We knew that before, but they will be in the background, as Sasha mentioned earlier. Like, a customer doesn't care what kind of technology am I using. It's more implementation detail, more or less. And then what we increasingly will see on the front end will be artificial intelligence enabled front ends that will make the interactions for the user as easy as possible. So yeah, I would say at least three different perspectives to look at what we're doing, or look at the different use cases. Maybe one remark in addition to the grant projects. I think this is a very interesting setup, especially in the case of like we worked on World Mobile Chain and enterprise participants, which enables innovation projects in a time where it's probably, especially in the mobility industry, there is a constraint on additional funding for innovation or digital innovation approaches. So it's very interesting. I also see it as a kind of a seed or proof of concept stage of a possible further product development. I think with all the use cases we can see there's utility that comes out from the verticals that propose these use cases, and then it enables actually to showcase what the technologies here, World Mobile Chain, can actually do. I think that's quite powerful to showcase that.
Okay, thanks, Jochen. Maybe a follow-up question to you, Sasha, about where do we stand if we talk about data markets, open data markets in the future, and monetizing data. If I understood you correctly, the projects you are currently having in the public transport are or could be labeled as a little bit more B2B and operational efficiency right now. So how do you tackle, let's say, the aggregation of IoT data? Are you preparing, let's say, data lakes and data monetization internally or in parallel projects? Or how do you see this space evolving in the next couple of years?
Right. Thank you so much. It's a great question. I do not, unfortunately, have a very satisfying answer right now.
Good. It's a discussion, not an exam. Yeah.
Right. So, I remember the time of I think the first data lakes that I've seen, right? It's been built by BigchainDB, Ocean Protocol, IOTA. It's been highly relevant, I think, in the year of around 2017, and we've been all discussing the data streams, etc. So I would say that there is a huge breakthrough in these topics with regard to DePIN projects. If we look into projects like Natix, right, they enable collective video streaming. If we look into the projects like, I guess, Silencio, it's another project coming out of Germany where they measure the surroundings noise. And so I think with regard to the B2C platforms, we've seen a major breakthrough in also specifically in DePIN Web3 space, because this is where the token models also apply perfectly, because we can decentralize the supply part of data stream. The question that still remains, as I know in this space, is the demand part of the application, because by the end of the day, each time when we talk about data lakes, there are also certain SLAs connected to this, right? If we're gonna go and sell our data today to someone, of course, there will be a question around who created it, right? So all the question about garbage in, garbage out, about the data consistency, about the data provenance. And so I believe that the level of development has advanced a lot. However, I know that there is still an issue of how do we actually package the data, how we sanitize the data, and how to make the data very professional, as we will always have the question of crowdsourced data, how good this data is, right? I can take my phone and pretend I'm a car or whatever, right? So we have to build a lot of kind of proofs around the crowd-funded data. So this is on the B2C side of things. So I encourage everybody to look into this new amazing platforms that have been built over the last years. On the B2B side of things, what we are creating at the moment, so the data that we are gathering, the telemetry data, is still being held private. This is just the case right now because it's B2B use case. So the companies are still aggregating the data. I think, from our perspective, there's been already a huge shift towards, I can actually hash and sign the data and put it on chain, and it's not something private. So I'm super excited about this because there is like a massive continuous HTTP data stream that we are creating for the industry. And at least what we're doing from the Stacks perspective, we're massively pushing open public blockchains. And this being said, even pushing the more critical applications, as we say, let's write maybe in the same time into multiple chains, because for redundancy reasons, for security reasons, for cyber resilience reasons. And so I think, from our perspective, that's the first step. The second step where we can say, well, now you can actually start selling this data. This is what we're currently working on. I think, from our perspective, we still miss the understanding because, if you want to open it up for mobility operators, they have to understand which data makes sense for other parties. So I think there is still kind of missing construct of if I'm selling the data, who is actually interested in this data, how much does it cost? So we still are not there to actually build reliant business models. The only one that is emerging, though, it's of course AI, right? So a lot of AI engines need the data to learn, to improve. And so this is where we're heavily looking into that we can say, well, any data that you create, environmental data, temperature data, mobile coverage data, is at least right now needed for AI engines. And this is where we can supply trusted data. And this is from our perspective, the kind of killer application for data lakes at the moment, right? Because Other data streams are a little bit more complicated because, as I said before, who do I sell it to? How do I package it? How do I create, contracts around it? How do I, enable continuous data stream? And then, for instance, for our project, again, if we sell temperature data, it's just only one little part of Germany that we cover. And then there is again a question how good it is, right? Because maybe it's not enough. So that's what we found so far. Just as a summary, I think B2C models are much more, front running on the topic of data lakes. And for the B2B environment, we're super bullish on mostly trusted AI use cases where we can connect the dots and connect the producer of the data with at least, AI engines that wants to be trained and that need this data today. So that's our 2 cents for this.
Let's follow up with Mickey here. Mickey, earlier you explained a little bit about the difference of World Mobile's approach compared to Helium, that you were focusing on connectivity first. But of course, also with these industry ground projects, you are tapping into data and IoT projects. So do you see, let's say, are you treating those two, let's say, streams differently, or do you see connectivity as a prerequisite for IoT data transport and management? So what's your strategic view on IoT data markets and their emergence?
Well, I think first comes oxygen, water, and food, because we're the operators of this infrastructure in most cases.
Yes.
Then equally as important is energy, is power. And then the next most important thing is connectivity, because if you can't connect, how do you do the things that you need to do? We couldn't be having this call, machines can't connect. But let's go back to
You could connect your camera though. Then we see you.
There we go. So let's go back to Ulstrom. So Ulstrom is building on World Mobile Chain, and they're tapping into blockchain infrastructure designed for real world applications. So they need a transparent value flow, right? And they also are thinking about participation and rewards. So it's very interesting to see, as we built the World Mobile Chain, although the World Mobile Chain initially was designed to serve World Mobile, what we've done is we've created a system that telcos can come into, and they've got purpose-built tools, as well as a platform of the Earth node operators. The Earth nodes, 1,000 nodes on our network, where I think the real innovation is that they can tap into the services that we built, but also in the future, services that other people would build. And this is what's very exciting. So you build the foundations right, you allow everything to happen on the World Mobile Chain. I mean, I think even memes will launch on the World Mobile Chain, but that's not something we're going for. I agree with Alex that AI data sets are super, super important now. That's probably a very good use case, but also our data set, we're connected right now. Where do we get that information? Right now, Zoom has that information, right? Right now, our ISP has that information, but we're the creators of that, and we're paying for this. You're paying for a full Zoom subscription. I'm paying as everybody else is for connectivity to connect via either our mobile phones or our ISP at home. So it's really interesting to see the use cases that will come to the World Mobile. I think you just have to build the right foundations and something that's there, that's cheap enough that it can be used by institutions and industry leaders and big companies, but not too cheap that it can be spammed by and I think that's a lot of the mistakes that other people have made. So you have to find the middle ground and then be dynamic and adaptive in the flow for who you're serving.
Okay, perfect. Then last question to you, Mickey, before we head into the last block and cover the project that you have been doing, or 51 Notes has been doing with you and IABG. Talk about the importance of community, because yes, there's, let's say, the data handling
number one, the most important.
Yes, but of course the Helium case and also parts of your case, it's trying to use crowdfunding to build up a network, especially in areas that are underserved, and to build out infrastructure. So what have you learned from interacting with your community over time, and how can you bring that power of the community also to industry projects. Which are your thoughts here? We discussed recently connectivity via satellites as well. So where do you see this going, the power of the community?
Again, that's the superpower. That it's as simple as that. Whether they're developers that are developing and building tools and thinking, whether it's a bunch of people coming together to change the world and invest into their own infrastructure to deploy, whether it's just people talking. We've, as tribes, as communities, we've only ever been successful. Not a single person can be successful on their own. And the beauty of the ethos of blockchain and crypto is that together we can change the world. And we believe that at World Mobile, together we're unstoppable. We're stronger than Google, we're stronger than Facebook, we're stronger than Microsoft. Yes, they have a lot more money, but as the community grows, all of a sudden you have this extended arm of a lot of very flexible people that can come and actually create something that you didn't even think about, that you didn't think was possible. So Uber is a perfect example of that, right? Uber owns no cars and has no drivers on their employee books, okay? But it's the biggest industry, the biggest company within the transport industry in the world, all because of a community. I think our community can be as big as that, if not bigger, because the incentive is there as well for them to participate. And whilst I say that, we've built the foundations of World Mobile Chain, the World Mobile ecosystem, the air nodes, the earth nodes, it will be the community that take that forward and have the tools to be able to build services for the World Mobile customers, but not just World Mobile customers. Of course, other mobile network operators are joining, other MVNOs are joining. So all of a sudden, World Mobile is not just the gateway for the internet for millions of people, which it is today. It also becomes the gateway to millions of people for developers and community. So the power of the community can never be underestimated. The reason that Tesla is so successful is not only because of its product, it's because the community wanted that product to be successful and became very vocal and set up groups and started talking. The difference between Tesla and World Mobile is that you don't really have an input. You can't actually create. You can complain and you can praise. And that's, the power of a community has taken it that far. But with World Mobile, you can do everything as well as get your hands dirty and start building and start actually serving these products, these applications, these tools, bringing your own company on chain, onto the World Mobile chain.
Thanks, Mickey. It's always important to remind ourselves of why we are doing this. Maybe a closing question for this block, and getting back to Florian. Flo, you described the status of the railway industry, where we are right now, and how blockchain tech or decentralized tech can be used to build bridges and help with transitioning from legacy infrastructure and equipment to next-gen infrastructure and equipment. But does the community and the customers of not your customers, because Alstom is, of course, one of the world's largest B2B train and equipment and railway producers, for the network operators, the transport companies, will it play a role to include the wisdom, the flexibility, and also the financial power of the communities of commuters and travelers into the equation, or is this just a side thought?
Okay, so when we talk about the end customer, whereas Alstom, we're delivering trains, a signaling system, etc., to say infrastructure companies or operators, and those are then serving, let's say, the final customer. What we're seeing is that there's an emerging trend for ticketing, to have trustworthy data, transferable tickets, etc. A lot of discussion, for example, happening for the so-called Deutschland ticket, the German ticket, because there was a lot of fraud happening for that the ticket, and then the discussion obviously spurred up. So how can you actually prove that a ticket is only issued once and not several times, etc. And the other element is is also linked to the usage. So just to come back to the case that Sasha brought up in Latin America, there is a lot of fraud in Latin America on ticket usage, and what we're seeing is that blockchain could solve that issue. At the same time, there's always a beneficiary of that fraud, and the question is who is in the power to implement a trustworthy or trusted solution or non-breachable solution versus who's then doing it. So I think when we think about the community, we need to bring exactly this thinking into the world where we're saying, well, in the end, the community is paying for the fraud, right? The community is paying for everybody who's not paying for the tickets. And therefore, from my perspective, there should be a certain pull that people want their data to be used in the right way. People want, other people, fraudulently using public transport. So I think this is where the community could come in when it goes to the end passenger, the customer that has two interests: one, not to pay more because of other people paying less, and secondly, that they don't want to be tracked. People want their privacy, and I think that's a point which is not so open so far, because most people are happy that things are working, and I think this is where when we look at the big Facebooks, whatever of this world. What they're benefiting of is a certain ignorance when it comes to data security, data ownership, etc. And I think once we're unraveling this, and we're making people understand that the data ownership should be with them from a starting point, and there are solutions out there. This is when then there could be a spillover from a use case perspective.
Thanks a lot, Florian. And with this, let's move forward to the last impulse for this session. While we're still waiting for Daniel to come back, maybe Jochen, you can start by explaining how the pilot projects that you've been doing with IBG and also using World Mobile Chain's underlying tech to manage data that come from fleet of drones, and how this will affect, let's say, dual use technologies in the future.
Yeah, thanks. We started early this year with a project with IBG. IBG is a defense service company with, I think, 1,200 people located in Munich, Germany. And as Daniel mentioned before, he's head of their innovation unit. And so in collaboration with Daniel, with IBG, and under the umbrella of the current grant project program together with World Mobile, we implemented a use case there. So the overall or underlying need for that is in the defense area, the usage of drones and the importance of drones is growing rapidly. That can especially be seen in the Ukraine currently. Drone warfare in the air, but also on sea and growing with land drones as well, has shaped the face of the battlefield significantly. We're still in an area where we have a human operator, especially in the first person view drone setup, but step by step drone operating will also be augmented and then overtaken by autonomous and algorithmic driven means. So that's like the overall picture, and then in a more detailed way, what is important or growing in importance is what the data, how trustworthy the data of drones are currently. So once you have a operator operating one drone, that's not the biggest issue, but once you evolve into drone swarms and more algorithmic control of drones, the quality of your data and the knowledge of the data source grows. So for these cases, what we did together with IABG is basically taking drone data and then notarizing it using the World Mobile Chain capabilities in order to make sure that the data we get out of the drone is in fact the data that is produced by this drone. Yes, there is of course the problem of garbage in, garbage out. So how can you control that your data input is valid, or is actually the data that it pretends to be? So there is a security breach, a theoretical security breach, but the severity or the likelihood is not too high with a drone that you control from the start to the beginning, to the end. Nevertheless, what we can see and what we did is more like a data stream based notarization. But then you could also extend it in the next step to a hardware-based data source, data source signage in a way. So I think one of the interesting developments we are currently seeing is actually the development of these hardware components that can eventually make sure that the data is even more secure. And just mentioning Move ID and the work we do with Bosch is we are moving in that direction. So basically, coming back to the IBG use case, what we showed there is the complete value stream of capturing, notarizing, and then managing data out of flying drones are feasible, can be done with existing decentralized infrastructures like World Mobile Chain, and can be utilized in a very clever manner, actually, because you already have the infrastructure, you already have the network that you can use, and then World Mobile Chain comes with an array of very helpful capabilities that makes that job actually quite easy. So yeah, happy to work in that use case.
Maybe a follow-up question, Jochen. You talked a little bit about data provenance and that trust is established. But I guess part of those projects is also in the future to allow access control mechanisms so that you have data coming from the moving objects, be it a drone or a car on the street in the future, but you also have the fixed data sets like the space grid that could be tokenized, so that there's a matchmaking between a drone flying into a certain perimeter and then maybe it's forbidden because of smart city regulations, or a toll might be applicable. Do you see a lot of power in this kind of matchmaking situation between mobile data sets and their, let's say, vectors, and stable data sets where just the conditions might be changed? This is a toll-free Sunday, or this is a toll day. Because I guess for the orchestration of fleets, for example, this might be quite important to
Once
integrate
we look
environmental data.
exactly, once we look into a more autonomous and swarm-based application set or setup, zoning use cases for flight patterns are very essential. I would say you also want to define what kind of vectors these drones are flown on. So you wanna give directions there. So that is of course a very necessary capability while the drone is flying. Then with regards to, for instance, positioning data and the related video footage, for instance, I think that depends on an array of follow-on systems. For instance, in the military field, there is now or at least in Germany, there is a company that integrates different data sources in order to create an overview over the battlefield, for instance. And so once you have a system like that, it depends on the system and on the parameters there, what kind of data might make sense to integrate. But if you have a live stream or if you have a historical video feed, that might be quite valuable in something like that, because other involved parties could use the same information. It wouldn't be only accessible for one party that has authority over the drone. So we see systems like that emerging, and we also know that especially in Ukraine, they also have a data source integration system they're using there. So yes, I think the value is there for live data as well as recorded data.
Question to you, Mickey. Since we mentioned zoning and with World Mobile, you have these different rollouts. You mentioned it in Africa, in Asia, also in the US and in the UK. Have you interacted with, or of course you have interacted with governments and licensing bodies, but do you also receive requests from municipalities to, allow certain things or enable certain things in a region? So is there also, let's say, a bottom-up desire for zoning cases? Because we talked about drones now mostly from the defense perspective.
Excuse me, I can't be on camera now because I'm on the move, but and I have to drop off in just a couple of minutes. But spectrum is exactly that, right? So when you have licensed spectrum frequency, you have to zone it. You cannot go over the borders of what's allowed. So take, for example, the UAE and Oman. It's a very small border. But if you are sending spectrum in, you have interference. So naturally, zoning is something that we are very aware of. And then if you go down to a different level, sure, governments, municipalities ask for certain different things, set of rules, set of infrastructure that are put in place. But I think going back to IABG, we very much enjoyed working with them, but they're anchoring the drone data on chain using World Mobile. Because the EarthNode network provides the verification, integrity, and decentralization required for such a high trust infrastructure. And then from the streaming aspect, that's really interesting for us as well, because we've implemented a system called PRAFT into the EarthNode network, which supports the World Mobile chain. And that is, I'd have to bring my tech guys on to really talk about it in depth, but that's able to handle around 200,000 transactions per second of known files, right? Of unknown files, you're looking at around 80,000 to 100,000 transactions per second. So part of being a telco is making sure that you can deliver services to the end user. So what we've built for streaming for our end users actually can be reused by someone like IABG, right? So it's quite exciting to see all this stuff come to life. And I don't know what mobile chain is going to be the most famous for. Today, it's probably the most famous for having 2.2 million customers, right? Where will it be in a year's time with all these different partnership and relationships that we have and all the different tools that we've built that can be repurposed to serve not just the telco industry, but the defense industry, Alstom, people like Bosch, and the other partnerships that we have in place. When you've got a network that's designed for physical data sources, whether it's air nodes, sensors, drones, autonomous aerial systems, and you can turn those records, that raw data, into verifiable records on chain, you've solved something, right? And with
Perfect.
that, we're going to see more demands, more use. And, you know, Alex said earlier on, this is the biggest problem in the blockchain industry. Where's the demand, right? So I think we're heading into an era now where the demands is going to become greater and greater because the maturity of the industry and the tools that are being built are not just based on founders getting really rich on tokens like was the 2017, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22 era. I feel like 23, 24, and 25 have been like, okay, show us real world application, which in honesty is the antithesis of what blockchain is. You know, memes, they do nothing, we'll buy them and we'll just support them and they'll go up in price, right? And then you have companies like World Mobile Chain that are working extremely hard to bring real world value, but eventually that real world value catches up and we can be in a good place in this industry.
Perfect. Thanks for this kind of wrapping up statement, Mickey. Thanks for your time today. Of course, feel free to move on while we take a last tour of, let's say, summary statements. And before we ask Alexandra and Jochen for their summary, let's now quickly involve Daniel. Thanks for coming back.
I just want to say thank you. I have to love you and leave you. Appreciate everybody that's joined the call today. Appreciate speaking to everybody. Jochen, we're speaking in a few hours. Look forward to it. Take care.
Looking forward.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, Mickey.
Bye.
So Daniel, Jochen has explained a little bit about the project and also the importance of, let's say, live drone data and data provenance from a defense perspective. Of course, we're not in favor of war zones and war fields, but of course we now know that we have to be prepared, even in Europe. But maybe you can also describe a little bit about the dual use role of drones. We have last mile delivery scenarios coming up. And while we talked a little bit about autonomous driving with Peter, we've seen some delays in that sector. So autonomous cars are, yes, there in San Francisco, if you talk about taxis, but not yet in Munich, Germany. So what's the status of drones? And maybe you can talk for 2-3 minutes about where you are with IABG and where you see the value of blockchain.
Well, I think the status of drones in the dual use defense space, you can find it best in the Ukrainian war, where you have like iteration cycles, updates of not only software but also hardware wise of 2 weeks, and they are deploying hundred thousands of drones a year. I have one number in mind from the last year Munich Security Conference. The innovation officer of Ukraine said like 1 million drones per year. They want to actually manufacture. So that's the status, and that brings also like it has to be autonomy inside these drones, because no one can handle this mass of IoT components, and with autonomy, I think there comes swarming into play, there comes connectivity into play, then there comes security into play, connectivity wise, security, robustness of AI functionalities. So things have to be kind of qualified in a secure way, so that nothing happens really really badly that you don't want to have in a battlefield. Where are we in Germany? I think there are lots of startups, lots of teams from sprint challenges down to the Bundeswehr, dealing with drones and autonomy in all scales, I would say. So small drones, counter drone activities, up to this future combat air system, unmanned combat vehicle activities. We have now maybe not anymore a limitation of money with some billions of euros flowing into defense and innovation. It's now, I think, more a thing of mind shift here, towards innovation, towards acceleration of the cycles. You bring these new technologies into the battlefield or into qualification, into procurement. So I think that's the main issue for the German Bundeswehr and probably also for European level activities.
Can you also talk about smart cities for a bit to highlight the dual use aspect? Drone delivery.
Well, yeah, drone delivery. So we are not really involved with IBG in these activities, but I mean, same questions here. I would say so. It's probably even more a topic of security. I don't know how much you guys talked about identities and identity management. So these are definitely things with the OID activities coming in 2027. I think that something has to happen there. Like and also on ground, yeah. So it's not only these flying drones, but also the driving ones, or autonomous driving, be it like bigger trucks or people movers.
The last question to you, also looking at your innovation projects at IABG, you've now worked in this project with 51 nodes and World Mobile Chain as a layer 2 or layer 3 rather here. So have your expectancies towards, let's say, efficiency and scalability and throughput been fulfilled? Are you personally happy from an innovation perspective with the progress of tech in the blockchain space? And what's your wish list for DePIN projects to reach markets and higher maturity in the next couple of years?
In my opinion, technology-wise, I think we are on a level where things can be scaled, deployed and scaled. At least we showed in a small prototype that it's possible. I think for the adaptation, there's still some way to go, because you have this renowned actors out there in the mobility space, also in the defense space, by the way. Yeah. And these people, these organizations have to adapt to this new decentralized technology, which I think is necessary when, for example, sorry for mentioning defense again. When you go on a federated level, like for example NATO or EU, probably same thing, yeah. Where you kind of have the need, or which is a federated system, yeah, and therefore you have the need to have some decentralized infrastructure available.
Okay, perfect. That was a good closing statement from your side, and maybe last words to Jochen and also Alexandra. What's your wish list towards DePIN being taken forward in the next 1 or 2 years, also taken from the discussion today and the projects that you've been doing in the last few years? Maybe ladies first, Sasha, short summary.
Sure. So I think, I would come back to the initial topic that we discussed. I think we definitely need more collaboration because by the end of the day, deploying Web3 solutions into the industry, it's not just like, just plug and play. It requires a lot of, work on the customer side. It requires a lot of work from our perspective. I'm super excited about what has started to happen that, for instance, the systems that we deploy currently, and it's just super exciting to, each time we're on a customer call and they give us the feedback like, wow, we didn't know it's possible. So for instance, like the other week, we as Stacks, we put for like a little bus fleet already around 1 million transactions per day on chain. And so, like just looking into the industry and they go in like, oh, we didn't know it's even possible, right? That, chains can actually support all this throughput. This is where we are today in the industry. So I wish to have more collaboration, more extremely exciting use cases. And I would just encourage everybody who works in this industry to be open. And for instance, in our work, we learn about new use cases every day. So, by showing them what's possible, they come up with, okay, we can do this and we can actually sanitize the data before we even store it into the cloud environments, like all these new topics. It's super exciting. So I just wish all of us more, this interlocked collaboration between the enterprise customers and, people working in DePIN and Web3.
Thanks, Sasha. Jochen, you wanted to add something.
Yeah, I would just add to Sasha's remarks. I mean, use cases are kind of the center of interest. I would say the concept of DePIN has huge potentials. I think the hard part is finding valuable use cases that can be deployed relatively easy, and that also are able to solve the general platform problem of supply and demand. But that it can happen, I mean, there's a couple of good examples out there. Mickey mentioned Uber. It is also, of course, a prerequisite that we have the necessary venture capital if we want to build something on scale or community-driven funding, and that depends from use case to use case, I would say. Yeah, that's I'm pretty positive, especially the technological conversions we can see right now, where really generative AI enables a lot more data use than we saw before, and also the integration of the generative AI capabilities with all the exciting stuff we can do with decentralized technologies is I think something to watch in the near future.
Thanks a lot, Jochen. And with this, I'd like to wrap it up. So thanks for listening today. At the German Blockchain Association level, we are trying to push these messages to politicians and also to corporate leaders alike. We had, let's say, 3 big topics so far this year. One is, of course, the incoming regulation in the financial industry and the new elements of the, let's call it, money stack, stablecoins, etc., and how this is helping treasuries and companies to act more efficiently. The second part, big building block, is the discussion around trusted AI. So as long as we are regulating in Europe, and personally I think that's a good thing, we need to make regulation digestible, but it also means that we should, in the AI and blockchain space, think about the strategic coordination between AI and blockchain as the trust spending backend notarization element. And the third one is, of course, how to increase automatization, that we can build a more efficient economical system, stay on track with the Green New Deal, but also help companies to achieve those financial efficiencies that they need in these times. So I think this discussion around DePIN, about international collaboration and how we have not private-public partnerships in many cases, but private sector partnerships here to build out parts of the underlying infrastructure is very important. Thanks especially for the corporate representatives. They were talking about their progress. Florian from Alstom, Peter from Bosch, Peter Busch from Bosch. And now also Daniel from IABG. Of course, it's sad to have to put such an emphasis on dual use and battlefields and to have barbed wire in the background, but it's also part of our reality. If we talk about more resilient systems, unfortunately, this also includes the weapon part of things and coordination and logistics. So with this, I hope that you stay in touch with us. You can become a member or just benefit from our activities, help us to shape the innovation agenda in Berlin, in the German regions, but also towards Brussels. And we are going to hopefully see some of you in the next webinars and events after the summer break. Wishing you all some sunny days, hopefully in August, and talk soon. And thanks for staying here, including this little bit of overtime that we had today. Bye.